I am Misi, and this is the Cello Suites, Barriers Broken in One-Line Polyphony. Partly because he wasn't famous till over 100 years after his death, we know less than we would like about Johann Sebastian Bach. Most people now think of him as a wigged figure, a genius but a boring one. But Bach's life was far from boring. He had over 20 children, a swordfight with a bassoonist, and he was thrown into prison. During his time in prison, people think that he wrote one of his most famous pieces, the Cello Suites. But no one knows this for certain because the original manuscript of the piece was lost. In fact, little about this piece is known for certain, including who wrote it, why it was written, or what instrument it was written for. But what makes a piece so little is known about so famous today? It was when Pablo Casals stumbled into a second-hand music shop. He walked to the back of the shop till I found the area labeled as Cello. Therein lay the piece that changed my entire career. It was entitled The Cello Suites, 6 Suites. I knew that this was a masterpiece. Bach had written it. I had not known before then that Bach had written anything for solo cello. Apparently, as I found out later, they were only used as etudes, as exercises for the cello. But when I found it, I practiced it for 12 long years before daring to perform it. I finally did in either 1901 or 1902. I knew that there was a lot going against me. Even in the year that I found the Cello Suites, 1890, Bach was called a wig stuffed with learning. But when I did perform it, the reviews weren't bad. Grieg, he was a composer, he said, "This man does not perform, he resurrects." And one of the reviews said, "It was Bach with the strictest regard for classical form, yet without the dry and unimpulsive manner which the pundits have taught us is the correct way to play music." But was it Pablo Casals or Bach that made this piece famous? Yes, Bach broke barriers by writing works for solo cello, which had never been done before. And Pablo Casals broke barriers by performing them really well. He also established cello as a concert instrument, but it was the music itself that broke the barriers. The music that Bach had written. Bach was known for something called polyphony, more than one melodic line playing against each other. But how do you put polyphony into an instrument that can only play one line at a time? Just listen. Now you probably can't hear polyphony this time you've heard it, or even the 1,000th time you might hear it, but it is there. There's the drone, the lower note. It's a drone, which was very common in music before Bach's time. In the middle melody, there's a scale going up, and then there's the top. That's just the first of thousands of examples of polyphony that Bach broke barriers by putting into one instrument. Another time he did this was in the Allemande of the first suite. Now this is where he did something truly special that hasn't been done before, and I don't think has been done since. Now it sounded really empty, the whole scale did, and the whole entire piece would. But that's just because I left out one chord that he had written at the beginning. What Bach does is he puts the melody and the harmony so close together that he only plays one and they both change. Bach broke barriers by entrusting his audience to come up with a harmony. And the audience doesn't even realize that they're doing this. Another time he put polyphony in, which would be a more obvious example, is with chords. In the Sarabande from the first suite, he broke barriers by putting chords into the music. Even though it's only written written for one instrument. My favorite examples of polyphony in the cello suites, though, are when there are more melodic lines that are playing one after another, so it sort of sounds like an argument. In the sarabande of the third suite, it starts with just one voice, and then another one comes in, and then a third one comes in. And it's like they're all fighting, but it's still happy. One voice. Two voices. Then it just keeps going on and on and on. Another way Bach broke barriers with the cello suites is by putting his own name into the music. Using the German usage, B flat A C B spells Bach, which doesn't really sound good on its own, but when you put it as the polyphony in the sarabande of the third suite, it sounds really nice. So Bach broke barriers with polyphony all over the place in the cello suites. Then why aren't the cello suites appreciated more than they actually are? Why isn't Bach, who broke so many barriers, appreciated more than he is? It's because he broke barriers that he wasn't appreciated when he was alive. It's because he put chords like this into his music, which was almost unheard of at the time, and even now doesn't sound good. But when Liszt, 100 years later, put it in, one of the reviews said, "It is impossible to convey through words this musical monstrosity. Who has heard that and found it beautiful is beyond help." But he put it into the music and it still sounded good, even though it was written 250 years ago. He broke barriers by advancing polyphony. Another way he broke barriers, another reason why he's not enjoyed today is because he broke barriers. It's because he broke barriers that Beethoven memorized his works, and it brought Beethoven so much farther as a composer. Beethoven would not have been the same if it had not been for Bach. So modern music, it might be so much more interesting than Bach, but it wouldn't exist without Bach. One more example of the cello suites. This is my favorite example that I've learned so far. It has complete tension, which just shows the emotional heights that Bach can reach with just one instrument. This is already after 2 minutes of the tension building and building, and it finally reaches a climax and just stops, and then it ends really quietly.